And while we're waiting, we set up a few polls just for the few minutes while we're getting everyone going here, just to get some interaction going. So I'll just leave all of these up for 15, 30 seconds or so, and we'll just have these going while people are joining us. So our first one is about Twitter. All right, I'm going to close the first poll here. Okay, it looks like we had everyone answered 100% all of the above, which is the correct answer. You can use Twitter through web, text, and instant messaging. All right, Gretchen, you going to pull up the next poll? While we're waiting for everybody to come on, we're just going to do a couple of these just for fun that are related back to technology. And this one was, when was Twitter publicly launched? And again, so far it's looking like most people have maybe not dialed in via the phone yet. So you won't, unless you have a microphone with your computer, you won't be able to join in the conversation unless you dial in that 1877 number. So please do that. And also there's a button where you have to select use telephone as your audio mode. So make sure that that is checked and not use mic and speakers. Marsha, I think I have you unmuted now.
Yeah, I'm on.
There. Okay, I think we'll close out our next poll. The answer to that one is actually B, July 2006. It was publicly launched, and it was founded by 3 different guys. All right, our next question. It looks like we're getting a lot of people logging in here, so we'll be starting in just a minute or so. And the question that's up for a poll right now is, when was YouTube launched? And you know what? I don't have the answer right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it's February 2005, letter A, which looks like almost 30% of responses were answered that way. We're going to have one more question here, one more poll, and then we'll get started. This is a fun one. Who has the most fans on Facebook?
What was that?
Not sure what that was. I'm unmuting some people who have dialed in. That causes a problem. We'll have to mute them back up. Okay, I think we'll close out this next poll. So it's who has the most fans on Facebook? And interestingly enough, it's actually the first answer, Eminem, who has even more fans than Michael Jackson, who's at second, and I think it's about 35 million right now. Looks like we have quite a few. We've got 11 attendees listening right now, and maybe we want to just go around and have everybody just say, Gretchen will go through the regions and just have everybody give a shout out with what regions. Sure, sounds good. Let's see here. Looks like I'll start with Cinerea. I know they're joining us. I don't see anyone on yet. Do we have anyone from Cinerea? All right. And I'm going to skip over Tennessee. Karen's daughter is graduating today. It's graduation weekend already in Tennessee. It's early, at least for us in Minnesota. So she'll be watching the recording. Louisiana PTI?
Present.
Hello, how are you?
We're here.
Good, all right, welcome. Do we have anyone from Peel Center on?
Rose Huber's here. Hi.
Hi, Rose.
Hi, Rose.
How about South Dakota? I know we had people registered from Edinburgh Center, so do we have anyone from Task on the line?
Matthew Johnson.
I'm here.
Task is here.
Laura Martinez.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, and we have Denver CPRC. Like not yet. And CUNY.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
And let's see, from OSEP.
Marcia?
Hello, how are you guys?
Good. Carmen's not going to be on because she's picking up her daughter from college.
All right. And Lisa is on. Welcome, Lisa. And then the regions, Region 5. Looks like I see JC on. Looks like she hasn't dialed in her audio pin yet, so I can't unmute you, JC. Sorry. Welcome. And I see we have some more people on from some of the other centers that are joining in, so I think we have everyone pretty much represented. So thanks, everyone, for dialing in today on this Friday, and we'll get jumped into the agenda here.
All right, this is Julie. Welcome, everyone. Our agenda today, we hope to complete it in less than an hour. And we're just going to start with a brief overview of Section 5 and also Activity 5, just in case you haven't had a chance to look at it on the wiki yet. And then Gretchen's going to provide an introduction to business process mapping, and we're hoping that many of you had an opportunity to watch the YouTube videos that are also posted to the homepage of the wiki. And then we're going to try brainstorming activity around that, and we're going to show a couple different software options, or just options and examples around business process mapping. Following that, we'll do a couple wiki updates, show you a couple wiki updates, and then we're going to just have a brief discussion about getting feedback on your plans to date, and then just cover some next steps. So we'll jump into today's agenda with a review, and Gretchen's going to pull up there's a roadmap timeline. This is also posted to the wiki. And just to show that for month of May, on May 31st, the deliverables are Section 5, Activity 5, the implementation plan of your technology plan, and that we're looking at a timeline of having that due on May 31st. And Gretchen, I'm going to ask you to pull up the Section 5 PowerPoint. Okay. This PowerPoint is also posted to the wiki, and I'm going to run through just the slides so that we can just, again, cover what is happening for May. Section 5 is about implementation, and within that, you're going to be looking at your many of you have 3 technology initiatives. Some of you, I know, have 4 even. Others have different numbers. But we're going to look at the timeline for those activities, and now is when we're looking at determining staff versus consultant roles, and also looking at some of the financial aspects and whether you want to have requests for proposals or vendors. And within the scope of this plan, you're going to be looking at just the staff responsibilities and start delineating that piece of it. Also, if you're using outside contractors or vendors, you'll be outlining what that requires. Along with that, there'll be the timeline. So this is where you're really starting to look at, kind of getting down to the more of the details of what's actually going to happen with implementing your technology ideas. So again, these are the stops along the way with your roadmap, creating the timeline, assigning the staff and consultants, determining if you need vendors and their role, and then it's also the time to start getting quotes from outside vendors and determining what the cost might be, and if that's applicable. Some of the things that you're doing may not have costs attached to them. And then, as usual, we're asking that that information be posted to your wiki page. We're putting a timeline of May 31st on that. And again, I just want to mention that at any point along the way, if you have questions, you can post those to the discussion board on the wiki. You can mail Technology Leadership Initiative. The email address is in there, and JC, Roger, Gretchen, and I will respond to that. And we're always available via a phone call or an email. We're always here for you, too. We want to hear from you. These are just some things to help in connection with Activity 5. Obviously, today's webinar is one of those. The business process mapping videos, those URLs are posted on the wiki as well. And they're just short 5-minute videos that provide the overview of business process mapping. And then as far as everyone should have a copy of the book, Managing Technology to Meet Your Mission. And there's some information about business process mapping on those designated pages of 87 through 89. Also, at this time, too, it's a great thing to be looking at that Idealware field guide, which everyone was given one during the N10 conference. And I don't know if anyone has access to this. I brought up the WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and Plone. That's another Idealware field guide on content management systems. And if anyone wants to get access to that, I have a copy of it, and I could run pages and provide that too. It's a nice resource to really kind of outline what some of the content management systems are for developing a website. This just goes into Section 6, what the next steps will be. I won't go into this in great detail, but it's where you start looking at your budget and outlining your budget. And that's a deliverable that will happen at the end of June, so June 30th. And also by June 30th, we're looking to have a technology plan where you put all your information in there. It's not going to be your final plan because there's going to be a review process along the way, but that's the timeline that we're shooting for, to have at least the information put into a form that would cover all the activities that have been done along the way. And these dates, we'll go through them again at the end, but the deliverable for Section 5 is May 31st. Our next TLI webinar is June 10th. The deliverables for Section 6 are June 30th, and also just reviewing the plan in its entirety. And if you haven't put the dates on your calendar yet, the mega conference, the post-mega conference day for the TLI is going to be August 4th, and there will be more details coming about that. The group is working on the plan for that right now. We should have some more details within the coming weeks for that. Any questions about, I know that was rather quick, but it was just meant to be just an overview to orient you. But any questions about that?
Julie, this is Marsha. I just two things. One is I can't remember if we had shared with the whole group. I think we did, that part of what we wanted to do was some turnaround training, so we would have you all kind of become trainers and introduce another, either say 8 or 16 centers into this process, and we were going to start thinking about that at the mega conference, or before the mega conference, maybe have those next centers there. But all of us kind of discussed this and realized that there's still so much to do here, and you guys have been so busy. I mean, this has really put a lot on your shoulders. So we're putting those plans to start with new centers on hold because we really want to make sure that you have time to develop this and that you don't feel rushed and kind of overextended on it. I can't remember if we mentioned that to you at all, so but just in case we did, just to let you know that we're putting that on the back burner. And the other thing is, we know people like to make plane reservations early, And so we have that day scheduled on August 4th for the follow-up, the day after the mega conference. And we have been discussing how long that day should be. We've kind of been going back and forth on it, but we haven't really come up with an end time yet for it. So if you're one of those people that really feels the need to think about making your plane reservations, I know that has financial implications. If you could talk to your project officer and just let us know, and we will try to get some consensus on that as soon as possible, because we know that's important to people. Thanks, Julie.
All right, thank you for that, Marcia. We appreciate it. And just as a brief mention to that August 4th training, what we're looking at doing is just, reviewing the plans again, making sure that everything is on track, talking about some sustainability options for the TLI, and then also looking at some specific content training. So that's the rough parameters of the August 4th training date right now, and we'll be following up with details as soon as we can. All right, does anyone else have any other questions on what Julie just went through that they'd like to ask before we move on? All right. Next, I'm just going to provide a general overview of business process mapping. If you had a chance to watch the videos, you saw the speaker take the example of receiving a gift and then acknowledging the donor. So that process was broken down into, receiving the gift, how to enter the data, scanning the gift, and then sending out a letter and a receipt to the donor. And so what business process mapping is it's used to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of your operation. So you take each action, like I just said, and break it down into each part. And there are several reasons why this can be beneficial. You might discover after looking at your process map that there's steps that are duplicated, or it could be made more efficient through the use of technology. You can also look at each step to be sure that you're really optimizing your interactions with your customer, whether that's a donor or a parent or other stakeholder. For example, in the video, they talked about when someone was filling in an online donation form, they talked about adding the field of employer, so you can gather that information from the donor as a way to kind of enhance your relationship with them, maybe establish some sort of match-giving program if that's an option. So it's just a way to really break down your process and look into each step. Business process mapping is also a great way to thoughtfully re-examine business practices that you've been doing possibly the same way for many years. There might be parts of the process that are outdated because of staffing changes or new technology that's been developed. So that's another benefit of business process mapping, is to really consider whether the current way that you're doing a certain part of your business is the best and most efficient way. It's also really important to make this a group activity. That way you get the input from everyone who's involved in the process, and you don't make any assumptions as to what other people are doing as part of the process. That's one way you might figure out that there is duplication of effort. And you'll ensure that you're capturing each step accurately as it's happening. So then you have a solid foundation for making improvements. So if you're thinking about doing some business process mapping, here are some good tips to consider. First, you should think about what the outputs are needed from the process. In the video, the example was the output was a thank you letter was needed for the donor, as well as a receipt. Another output that was needed was an accurate record of the donation in the organization's accounting system. So those are kind of areas of the process map that you might want to pay more attention to. So as I just said, after you've developed your map, you want to consider what the most important steps are. For example, maybe you have a process that you need to be sure includes review by the executive director. You might need another process that you need to make sure that there are certain internal controls for accounting processes. So you want to identify those important steps to ensure that they're a part of any new process map that you develop.
Another important thing is to look for any unnecessary duplication of effort. For example, you might find out that there's the same information being entered in multiple databases, so maybe there's a way you can streamline that. And you should also look at each step and consider what its purpose is. In the donation example, maybe it could be possible that it's being flowed through someone that doesn't really need to see it. So you can really take a look at each step and make sure that that really needs to be part of the process. And besides considering your perspective as the organization, it's also important to examine the process from the purpose or from the perspective of the customer. Whether, again, that could be a parent, it could be a donor, it could be someone else. So making sure that you're really maximizing that interaction with the person and giving them the information that they need. And then finally, particularly for this project, you want to look at your process map from the perspective of technology and think about, are there steps that are currently being done manually that could be automated to save staff time, or are there other ways that technology might help? So that's another important thing to look at when you're developing a process map. And then, so what I did here is just developed a sample process map that I thought we could have a little discussion around. And what this process map is for someone registering for a workshop. So for example, someone might be able to register for one of your workshops by phone, or they might be able to register for a workshop via the web. So over here, I can get my little fun pen to work. Maybe.
I think you got it.
So over here is the web registration. So if someone registers via the website, here's an example of a process that might occur in a parent center. The person registers via the website. There might be a staff person who prints out all of those web registration forms and then takes the information from those registration forms and enters them into whatever database is used for registrations. It could be Excel, it could be an Access database, whatever database is used. On the other hand, you might have people that call into the center to register. And so in that case, someone calls, the person who answers the phone might fill out a paper registration form, and then that paper registration form goes to whoever is entering the database, and they enter that information from the paper form into the registration database. So from this example, does anyone see any ways that you might be able to improve this process through technology or otherwise to make it more efficient?
Any responses?
Hey, this is Rose from TL. I would
Hey,
say
Rose.
take out. Hi. I would say take out the paper completely. The paper part.
Yep. So are you saying when the person enters it on the website, it would automatically go into some sort of database?
Right, because they're already on, using the internet.
Right. That's a great example of a way that this process could be made more efficient. Would be to skip that step of printing out the web form and then re-entering that information into a database. Anyone else? Julie's giving a hint here with some arrows with some other ways that this process could potentially be made more efficient. So another example would be, potentially the receptionist or whoever answers the phone and receives a registration or receives a call from someone who wants to register. Instead of filling out the paper form, they could log right onto the database and enter the information directly into that to save the step on the other side. And that's not to say that that's always the best. It depends obviously on the center and staff and other things, but that's just one way you could look at a simple process map like this and think about ways technology could be used to streamline and save staff time overall and make the process more efficient.
this is Julie, when I'm looking at this example, I'm reminded of a story of a previous organization I worked at, and I was being trained in on a process, and I had 5 sheets of the same document, so there was 5 copies there. And the person training me said, you take one document, you put in this folder, you take the second document, you put in this folder, you take the third document, you put it in this folder, as you do with the fourth. And I said, well, what about this 5th document? And they said, well, you throw that one away. And I said, really, you throw it away? And she said, yeah, that's the way we've always done it. And so it just took that opportunity to say, well, you know, why is that? And here was it was that the person who ran the number of copies have always been just told to run 5 copies, and the person that was putting them into folders never told her that she only needed 4. You know, so it's a great opportunity, I think, when you're doing that business process mapping, is just making sure you involve the right people into these, you know, into thinking through the process is an important step.
Right, and I just wanted to, some people were typing in questions that I apologize I didn't have that screen up. So Kathy also had the same idea, and she mentioned specifically the constant contact event program where the registration is online and automatically enters into a database with reports available to print. So that's a great example of a way that this process could be modified. Before we go into brainstorming some other ways that you might use process mapping in your organization, I'm just going to talk a little bit about different tools. Post-it notes, for example, if you watch the videos, the presenter there used Post-it notes where each step was on a different Post-it note, and if he determined he needed a new one, he would just add one to the column or move them around. So that's definitely an option. Pen and paper, obviously, is, you know, you could just draw your process map out. Word, you could use the shapes feature in Word to, you know, draw the boxes and arrows and things like that. The example I just showed was in PowerPoint. I'm going to go next to a program called Visio and show you that option, which is a little more of a high-tech, and I'm going from the Post-it notes on one end to a diagramming software program on the other.
Sure. Like Gretchen's pulling up the Visio document, Visio is a Microsoft product, and you can buy it, not so robust version, for $13 through TechSoup, and the more professional product is through it's $52 a license. And it looks complicated to use, but we've been playing around with it here, and you know, it's a lot like using Word or PowerPoint. And as Gretchen has it up on the screen here, she's just going to show some examples. You know, it's definitely more of a high-tech program, but it does have some advantages.
So this is just the same example that I just showed in PowerPoint, but they have specific different kind of work-related graphics that you can use. You know, so here's just a picture of a phone, obviously, to indicate the person who called in with the registration, or the web page to indicate the person who registered online. Each of those are followed with an arrow to a printed document, then with an arrow to an individual who is entering that information into the database. So that's just for people who are more visual. That's, you know, one way that same process map could be represented. Again, Visio also has the same, you know, kind of boxes and arrows that typical flowcharts do. So here's the same process map again, just using the boxes and the arrows. And I'm just going to show you some of the different options they have here in terms of graphics, just to get you a sense of this program in case it's new to you. Obviously, there are arrows, there are different backgrounds. Here's one that represents different departments. So, for example, if you needed a new, you know, person as part of this process, you just simply drag it over from the menu bar over into the sheet that you're working on. So it is pretty simple. Here are some of those documents that I was using. They have some workflow, like meeting, approve, things like that. And then they have all of the flow charts. So
So our examples didn't include the flow chart technical shapes, like they have, an oval for the endpoint or a diamond for a decision, but those are all, if you want to make a more complicated process map, it's just another option for a way to represent that. Does anyone have any other ideas for tools that you could use for process mapping?
Okay. And again, it can be very low tech, right down to the Post-its and the pen and paper, all the way up to a product like Visio. But the end result is still the same. You're thinking through your process, and how you want to get it down on paper is completely up to you. We're going to go through some brainstorming examples, and Gretchen's going to, I think, pull up either a Word document or a blank PowerPoint document. And does anyone have an example that they'd like to walk through or a suggestion? Otherwise, Gretchen and I have a couple in mind, but we wanted to throw it out to all of you if there was a process that you wanted to walk through and have the group give feedback on. And you can either send it to us through the go-to question, or just give a shout out on the call here. Any ideas? Okay. Gretchen, is anybody sending anything in?
I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
Oh, Kathy, I just unmuted you. Sorry, I just noticed that you were still muted. Just so you know.
Thank you. I've been talking to myself.
Kathy, did you have one?
I'm sorry. What was the question again? Because I kept redialing in, thinking I could try to get
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
We're just throwing it out to the group. If anybody has an example that they want to walk through a business process mapping with and get feedback from the group on. Like Jessica had that great example where she talked about the process that they used for timesheets. Does someone have another idea like that? Otherwise, Gretchen and I can throw one out there too.
Well, getting back to like the conference registration, that was one thing I was trying to bring out as to what we use with online registering. We use the Constant Contact event marketing, where you can have the attendee register themselves, or we can even go on there and register them. But they need to have an email address. For those who don't have email addresses and call in, we just have an Excel spreadsheet posted on our intranet where people automatically enter their information there, and then you can export the Constant Contact registers to a spreadsheet and then merge the two.
Yep, that's a great example of how to streamline that process.
No paper.
Yep. Great. It looks like Mary's typed in an example here. She suggested, what about bills come in and that need to be paid? So that's one example of a process to make sure. Obviously, that's an important one that you want to be sure is as efficient as possible. So if you were going to start that off, what do you think the first step would be in terms of your process?
Receipt of the bill.
Okay. We're going to try and do this too. Actually, I'm going to switch our tools over here.
Oh, Mary, if you should have a audio pin that's in your audio mode, or in your audio toolbar in the GoToWebinar screen, and if you enter that pin with a pound afterwards, I'll be able to unmute you.
Okay, and then the next step would be?
Enter it into maybe a spreadsheet if someone needs to keep track of the bills received. I don't know, can Mary speak? No?
Give Gretchen
All right.
a second. We're trying to share the house here.
All right, Mary, I have you unmuted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like I've been in a tunnel talking to myself forever.
Okay,
Screaming,
so we have,
help, get me out of here.
yep.
Yes, this is a process that we currently do, and I know we have too many steps in it, and that's why I brought it up, because what we do now is our receptionist opens the mail, and then she gives me all the bills, and then I'm the one who approves them and codes them and tells them, you know, under what funding it gets paid for. So I kind of keep my own Excel spreadsheet to make sure we're always staying on budget with each project before it goes to bookkeeping. And I don't know if, well, I do know. I do that because I'm just, you know, OCD. And I understand QuickBooks, but I just like to, I don't know, I like to see it like that for whatever reason. But I feel like it's an extra step that takes me a lot of time that it shouldn't take me. And then I approve it, and I have to print out an approval form with how it's supposed to be coded and everything. Then I send it to bookkeeping, and bookkeeping pays it. It goes pretty quickly. I mean, but you know, it's as quick as I can be with it. It just seems like it takes. I spend too much time touching it before it gets moved on.
Right. So you, because then you probably have to sign the check or bill or whatever later in the process too.
Right, and the approval form determines the disbursement as well in case it's something that has to be paid from several different sources.
Mm-hmm.
Have I accurately tracked it there?
Approval form. Yeah. And then
So
if
do you
I
enter it in the Excel spreadsheet, or does the person who opens it do that?
Mary?
I put it out on once I get it, I put it on an Excel spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that. It's open. I put it on the spreadsheet, and then I have the approval form. Then I give it to the bookkeeper, and then once the bookkeeper pays it, it goes to Kathy, and she is the first person that signs the check, and she also is my backup to make sure that everything looks like it's right on there. And then I'm the second person to sign. We have two signatures on everything, so I'm the second person to sign off on it. And we have another signature person in the event one of us is out, but typically that's the way it pretty much always happens. So, and then from there it goes back to bookkeeping to mail out to make whatever necessary copies need to be made, and then to mail the check to the person. And it sounds like a long process, but I mean we can do all of that in an hour if we need to.
Right, but there's probably another entry point as well besides your Excel sheet, right?
Well, I feel like sometimes I could be probably entering into QuickBooks myself.
QuickBooks directly. I think you can. We just need to look at that.
I just don't know if that's a step I want to take because I really don't want to become a bookkeeper, and I don't want to become the person that's inputting the stuff. But this is the way that I feel like I can constantly stay on top of what's being spent. I'm not a micromanager, so not everybody doesn't have to come to me for every time they want to spend a penny. So this is the way that I see what, you know, other people that has authority to spend. I constantly see what's happening. I can see if the budget, if our copy machine budget, if we've made too many copies, if things, you know, if things just seem out of whack, or why is our external printing cost so much more, or whatever it might be. I just like being able to micromanage bills to know that I'm not ever over budget. I try real hard to squeeze every, you know, ounce of blood I can get out of every turn up I get, so I can survive.
And I think you're bringing up some great points that are helpful to consider when you're mapping this out. You know, so for example, maybe you determine that there is, you know, duplication of entry, and that you're entering it in Excel and someone else is entering it in QuickBooks. You know, but if you determine that the value of that step in terms of you knowing what's going on is worth it, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get rid of it in order to be more efficient. You know, it's just kind of walking, you know, but going through the process, you know, of mapping it out like this, or, you know, in more detail, you might be able to think about that and determine, you know, is it worth that extra step? And the answer might be yes, or if you decide it's not, maybe there is a more.
I was wondering if there should be a step where you list the actions that must happen as opposed to everything that does happen. Like it must be, or the disbursement must be made clear, you know, whether who makes it or whatever. Copies have to be made, things like that, or it has to be entered into QuickBooks, and then look to see if with things that have to be done, if those things can be done without all the extras and still take care of the kinds of things you need to know about. Am I making sense?
No, that's
Halfway, except for I believe every one of those steps there has to be.
yeah. And that's where, you know, involving everybody that's part of that process and just having that conversation is really helpful too. You know, and even putting the bookkeeper in there too might be a helpful step.
I also think transparency, and it's never a bad thing to have, you know, too many people touch something, only because I feel like if you were ever to have somebody that was going to try to do something, if it's acting in a silo, it's so much easier for somebody to do something where if, you know, if I try to do something, for example, chances are Kathy will notice it. Something, a red flag's going to go up somewhere if the bookkeepers would have missed it for some reason. You know,
right. And you know, accounting is probably one of the areas where, you know, the sometimes that duplication, like you said, is intentional. Whereas maybe if this were a different process that didn't have to do with money and, you know, ensuring that all of that's accurate and complete, you know, like maybe if this was somehow like, you know, something less critical, like a workshop registration, if 3 people were reviewing workshop registrations before they were entered, and, you know, and then so that whole process was delayed. You know, that would be something that, you know, efficiency might be more important than having multiple people look at it.
Well, and
I think that's a great point, that you want everyone to sit down and say what are the most important steps that we need to include, and then we might have other steps that we want to include, and that's, you know, worth it for us.
But getting back to the steps versus what's required, I see process steps different than required actions. What I'm seeing on the screen right now are process steps. What are required actions are that you have to indicate the funds that are going to pay the bill. It has to be approved by these people, blah, blah, blah. Maybe, Mary, like that spreadsheet you do, there might be something in QuickBooks that you could do it directly in there that interacts with what the bookkeepers do, so you're not having 2 separate things. See what I'm saying?
Great example. And that's even, you know, and when you're developing your process maps, you know, if you had every step down here, you know, maybe you could make the required ones in a different color or something like that, so that you're you're indicating that on your chart as you're developing that. But I think this is a great example of a good process that is helpful to take the time to think about. Okay, does anyone have another?
Move on to an easier one.
How to get more water for the Kentwood water dispenser.
Love that too.
How to get Bruce Willis to come say hi to Kathy.
That's right. I'm disappointed.
We could take, if anyone has another suggestion, we could walk through that. But I think, you know, this is just a nice illustration of just thinking through that process. And Gretchen, you have one that we could pull up real quick. Sure. Where we've been working on, you know, refining some database issues. And so one of the things, and we're working with an outside consultant to do this, and they mapped out, what was it? They mapped out our e-blast system. So it's kind of related back to the first example that we were talking about, you know, using constant contact or having your workshop registrations go direct into constant contact. Within our organization, we have kind of a convoluted process when we send out an e-blast, and just mapping through it, they did it a little bit differently, where they put the roll to the left side, and then they you know, they actually used all those different symbols and things like that. But bottom line is it pointed out some of the inefficiencies that we have, where like when information is pulled directly from our database, we should be exploring not this whole import-export three-step process that we have. And so it's just another example of, you know, sending out information using an e-blast. Any questions about some of those examples?
I just want to, Lisa typed in a good point that sometimes you're not getting rid of steps to make them more efficient. Sometimes you want to do business process mapping to make sure all the required steps are there. So the examples that we looked at so far were mapping out how things as they currently exist, and then you might find that you need to add things, or you might find that you need to remove things. But you can also develop a process map for a process that you haven't even started yet for a new activity, and maybe start with what you view as the required steps, and then build from there.
Yeah, it's something we haven't talked about, but I think business process mapping can be used as a proactive step. You know, and even thinking through when you have a new activity in your parent center and just putting down that business process mapping and thinking it through. And that way you've got the documentation and you can just tweak it as you go along, you know, as you recognize that there's things that you need to address. And so just a great documentation for looking at any activity. Any more comments about business process mapping or ideas before we move on?
This is Marcia. I sent a note to Gretchen, and it was interesting because I spoke with people from two of my projects. I'm not sure that either of them are on the phone right now. Other people from their projects are on. And both of them were saying to me, well, you know, I'd really like to find something to, you know, for example, help me track calls from parents when they come in. So I think this is a great discussion that we just had, and thanks to those of you who kind of got on and were generating ideas, because I think it's important to keep in mind that the original intent of this project was not to say, you know, here's great software that you can use for this, here's great software that you can use for that. National has always done that, and they've done a really great job of kind of introducing us to the newest types of media, different types of software, getting us access to that stuff. But the point of this project was really to help you develop this thinking process so that you can then go and identify the software or the technology, the hardware on your own. I think now you may have a lot of new resources that you never had before, N10, TechSoup, and all of that. Maybe some of you knew about it. So the end result of this, and I hope the two people I spoke to weren't disappointed, but the end result of this isn't that we're going to give you a long list of software that you can use for different processes, but to give you a new way of thinking about what it is that your center does, either in reaching parents or your specific population or your business process, teaching you how to think that through so that you can then go and identify the software that would help you meet that need. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Someone had a comment? Okay. All right. We're pushing our time here a bit, so we're going to go to just to show you the wiki. Some of the changes, again, just to orient you back to the wiki page. And Gretchen's pulling that up here. And we've done a lot of re-navigation on the wiki to kind of, you know, it's a dynamic product, it's living, it's ever evolving. But there's a few key elements on it, and right now Gretchen's showing us the home page. And on the home page, we're always going to try to keep information about the current activity. And then if Gretchen scrolls down, she'll also show that there's information about previous activities. And then there will always be the overview of the roadmap so that you can connect with the roadmap at any point too. And in that left sidebar, we've broken it down into really 3 categories. Under home, there's project management, and we've archived any activities under there. We've also put in any videos and webinars. That's where you'll find the calendar. Also, what's critical are the center pages, and Gretchen, she clicks on center pages home. That's just a link to each one of your projects where you're housing all of your information and posting your activities. Under that are the evaluation forms and results. There's also a link again to the roadmap, so there's duplicate links there. Also, I want to point out the discussion tab. That's just a great place to post, and put your ideas out there. And I know South Dakota has been really great about doing that, asking questions. But we really want to encourage everyone to, get involved on the wiki and share ideas. And, just you can post a question, you can post a tip, ask other people what they're doing with a certain activity. It's a great place to share ideas and feedback, and would really encourage you to go up there. Also, under that left sidebar are just the project resources. With Gretchen's been posting a lot of different technology resources that are based on topics and software and different things, different ideas, along with N10 resources. And then that third piece there, wiki resources, just has all the information about using the wiki, the do's and don'ts, the fun, who's on it, what's the structure of it, what's the overview of it. So again, this is it's a living, dynamic, place where people can interact. Any questions about the wiki at all? I think we did want to show you one thing under the wiki that Gretchen posted recently under technology resources. And it's under technology topical resources, and she's clicking on that and scrolling down to social networking. Because I know that a lot of organizations are interested in the aspects of social networking, and there's a great, TechSoup built a great wiki site just on social networking resources, and they picked what they feel are the top 6 as the largest sites, and they do a wonderful job of telling you, the reasons for using them, not so much about, the structure behind it and things, but how does it benefit your mission? And Gretchen, if you click on, say, just LinkedIn or YouTube, with everyone, it starts with a short video or two, and then also just provides a great information about, the reasons to use it, and gives you some bulleted ideas under there. So it's just a great example. It's a pretty quick tutorial to look through and get some ideas. Any questions?
All right, the next thing we wanted to do was just have a brief discussion for a couple minutes about feedback on your plans. Now they're, about halfway to a little more than that of finished. And we've heard from some people that, maybe they would, like some feedback from others on what they've posted to the wiki so far. And some options, for that, or having other, other of the 8 TLI centers, kind of brainstorm with you. We could set up some specific calls if that would be helpful to people. You could reach out individually to people. So we just wanted to give some time if anyone wants to speak up about what they think would be helpful, or if people want to wait till they feel their plan has been finished at June 30th. But if anyone has would like some feedback on what they've posted so far, if you just want to share how you think that would best be given to you, or what you think would be most helpful for that.
Yeah, and you can do it within the context of this call, or you can send it to anyone that's in the TLI 8. We're just open to discussion about that because we've had a couple different opinions about it, and we want to do what serves everyone the best.
This is Kathy. If I remember correctly, in our last web conference call, and maybe even a little pre-call for one of those, we had talked about wanting some feedback on our logic models, and
Okay.
I don't know that we got it.
Okay.
So I really would like to make sure that we're going in the right direction. In terms of the plan, I'll be honest, I started working on it this morning. So
No
I'm a
problem.
little
Is
bit
that,
behind on
you
that.
don't, if you don't want to share right now, but you know, if you want, you know, to receive that via the wiki, or if you want, you know, to have a phone call with, you know, someone from here or Region 5 or other centers, do you have a preference, or do you just want to email one of us and let us know, or?
I don't. Mary, do you have a preference?
No, they can do it whenever, however. We don't have any
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that up, that we hadn't responded to that request yet, so we'll be sure to be in touch with you about that.
Okay.
And I have a question. What happens if one of my fears is that we're going down a road that's going to be expensive, and what happens if we just don't have the financial ability to do one of our goals?
I think that's a great question, too, because that kind of ties back to how do you fundraise for technology, too, which might become an initiative. Do others have comments on that? I mean, you're certainly not locked into having to move forward with, you know, one of your original initiatives if that's, you know, kind of the decision that you come to at the end. So that's, you know, certainly don't worry about that.
I mean, one of the things,
you know, maybe you want to scale it back a little bit, or maybe you'll, you know, just focus on your other two, or, you know, come up with a different idea. But that's a good point, especially as we move into the next section, which is budgeting. And Elaine just typed in an important comment on the chat part of the webinar, that to remember that the plan is always evolving and a work in process. So it's never really, you know, final per se. So you know, I think that's just a great example of that, of how your priorities might change as you do more research. And, you know, a technology plan can be a great way to seek technology funding, too. So, you know, that might even be part of the process.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you know, anytime you're looking at a funder, and if you can approach them and say, this is what we've thought through, this is what we need to spend, it's a lot more, it becomes a powerful tool then. All right, well, we just wanted to bring that up, and we thank those of you who have shared and opened up with how things are going for you. We appreciate you sharing that with everyone, and just know that you can you know, get in touch with us anytime if you do have particular questions, like on the you know, on your logic model or other pieces. Feel free to email or call us, or put your question on the wiki.
Gretchen, it's Mary. I have one more question if I can ask it. One of the things that I remember from N10, they said that was very important is whenever you're trying to get bids or quotes from outside sources, is to create a really good RFA for them to bid on. And you know what? Let me just go back to the wiki, because I just, on the TechSoup newsletter that I got this week, I just actually added something to the technology resources page. It's under the planning resources. Okay.
And there's a section called Request for Proposals.
Okay.
And the TechSoup has developed a whole, they have examples that nonprofits have used for vendors and some tips.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So that might be a great thing to look through in terms of
perfect.
Developing your own.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, other comments? All right, this last slide, we're just looking at, as a reminder, some of the next steps and future dates, and I mentioned these earlier on in the webinar, but just looking forward to Activity 6, that's, we're going to have a webinar related to that on June 10th, this same date and time. And I know Friday afternoons are always kind of hard for everybody, but it seems to be the date that's working best for the majority. So we'll probably hold true with that unless we get a lot of feedback that it's not working. And also the deliverables for Section 6 will be June 30th. And then also at that time we're looking to have the plan, you know, in a form in which you've responded to all the different activities. Again, it's not your final plan because there'll be reviewing of that and other activities going on. And just that August 4th date, we'll try to be getting information out about that as soon as possible. Questions?
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating in the brainstorming and sharing and for being on the call with us today. And again, if you have any questions, you know, take a look around the wiki or add a new discussion, or you can always email or call the wiki wranglers, which is Julie and myself and JC and Roger from Region 5. Or I know the architects are happy to help as well. So we appreciate everyone's involvement in this project, and we'll talk to you in a few weeks.
All right. Just want to thank everyone for all your great work on this. And again, we're here for you. And please don't hesitate to contact any of us.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye-bye.